Alright, today we're going to talk about solid waste management. Same as always, we'll start with some basic definition and terminologies. Let's just start with the definition of the word waste. What is waste? Waste is any byproducts or discarded material of human activities, and it may be in the form of liquid, gas, or solid, and can be hazardous or non-hazardous. And solid waste is any waste or discarded material that is not in the form of liquid and gas. After World War II or post-industrialization, generating solid waste progressively increased without reusing and recycling. Generation of solid waste is one of the biggest problems in environmental health, and more importantly, the management of generated solid waste is a bigger challenge. There are two main types of solid waste: municipal solid waste and non-municipal solid waste. Municipal solid waste refers to garbage or trash that is generated in our households or small businesses and institutions. Generally, it's the paper, plastic, wood, yard waste, and things like that. Non-municipal solid waste is generated in a larger scale by industry, agriculture, mining, hospitals, and so forth, and is in a very large quantity. Our focus of today's class is on municipal solid waste. Again, municipal solid waste refers to garbage or trash that is generated in our household, small business, institution, and generally is the paper, plastic, wood, yard waste, and things like that. U.S. residents and businesses generate more municipal solid waste than any country in the world. In the year 2015, almost 258 million tons of municipal solid waste was generated, or on average 4.4 pounds per capita per day. Some people produce more solid waste, some people produce less solid waste, but on average it was 4.4 pounds per person every day. If you look at this chart, this blue line shows total municipal solid waste generation per million tons. It's been increasing. You can see that it's been increasing from 88 million tons of municipal solid waste in 1960 to around 262 million tons of municipal solid waste in the year 2015. You may say that the increase is because of population increase in the US. That's a reasonable question, but if you look at this orange dash line, which is municipal solid waste per capita per day, you can see it's increased from 2.68 to 4.48 pounds per person per day. Okay, so this is for the per capita generation of the municipal solid waste. You can see it's persistently increased over time, but after the year 2000, it's kind of level off as people started recycling, reusing, and composting their discarded material. What are the compositions or components of municipal solid waste? According to EPA or Environmental Protection Agency, the major components of municipal solid waste are paper with 27%. After that, it's food. It's almost 14.6%. Then yard trimming, 13.5%. After that is plastics, 12.8%, and metals, and so forth. So paper and food make the largest portion of the municipal solid waste. And according to this pie chart, which portion of municipal solid waste do you think is recyclable? Paper, almost we can say, paper, almost all papers can be recycled. Most plastic can also be recycled, glasses and metal. So this large portion can be recycled. It's almost half of the municipal solid waste can be recycled. And most of the yard waste and food waste and wood can be composted. So this part is almost 30% of the municipal solid waste can be composted. So you can see more than 30% and more than 50%, almost more than 80% of the municipal solid waste can be recycled or composted. So we left with rubber, leather, and textiles. And of course, some of the plastics probably may need to go to the landfill. Another important type of solid waste is e-waste or electronic waste, which is a growing solid waste, especially in recent decades because of the advances in technology. According to this chart, in almost 9 years from 1999 to 2007, the number of electronic devices that were discarded increased from 130 million units to 300 million units per year. And examples of e-waste are computers, printers, cell phones, and TVs. And every year 400 million devices are discarded, and unfortunately 67% of the devices are still in working order. They are put in landfill, but they should be treated as hazardous waste because they may contain heavy metals such as lead, mercury, cadmium, and they may contaminate soil or water. Why we should concern about waste disposal? First of all, they cause pollution, such as air pollution and water pollution. Disposed waste in landfill can penetrate into groundwater and cause water pollution. In less developed countries, liquid waste directly goes to the waterways and ocean without adequate processing. This can adversely affect organism and aquatic environment. For example, when we catch the fish and eat them, this waste, which may contain heavy metals, indirectly came back to us. And also another reason that we should concern about waste disposal is they can cause the spread of disease. Dump sites provide favorable conditions for growth and reproduction of insects, rodents, and consequently infect more people. And another reason is there is insufficient space for dump site. Site selection of dump site is a major issue. The site has to be far from where people live, and there are a variety of criteria that has to be considered for the site selection of landfills, which we will talk about them later on. Disposal of waste is even worse, especially in developing and underdeveloped nations. Some waste that are produced in developed countries are transferred to developing countries for dumping, but in these countries, in developing countries, often there are not sanitary ways for management of solid waste. For instance, China disposes 85% of the solid waste in rural open dumps or in poorly designed landfills, which is rarely seen in developed countries. Now let's move on to talk about management of solid waste. Keep in mind that we don't want to dispose solid waste in the landfill as much as we can. EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has developed a hierarchy for the management of the municipal solid waste. From the most favorable to least favorable option for management of the municipal solid waste, we have source reduction, then reuse and composting, recycling, incineration, and disposal in landfill. So the most favorable one is reduction, source reduction, and the least favorable of the management of the municipal solid waste is landfill or disposal in landfill. So let's talk about each option one by one. Source reduction is the best environmentally preferred strategy to manage solid waste, and which means reducing solid waste in the first place. Some examples are improvements in package design, use a smaller package. So when you order some small things from Amazon, it comes with a very big package rather than a small package. Seeking products and packaging that are free of toxic as much as possible. And PATE, or pay as you throw, is a program to encourage people to reduce the amount of waste. People are charged based on how much waste they produce. Consumers pay for every bag or can of waste they generate. They are motivated to recycle more and look for creative ways to prevent waste in the first place. Some states such as California, Michigan, New York, and Washington operate PATE programs since 1970s. Studies have shown that the program was very successful and residential waste has declined between 9 to 38%. The second most favorable strategy to manage municipal solid waste is the second R, which is reuse. Reuse means cleaning material and using material over and over again. Materials should be designed so that they are being able to be reused. For example, refillable bottles that do not need to be disposed instead of low quality plastic bottles that you have to dispose them after using. In Finland, almost 95% of soft drink beverage are refillable. Another example is to design products that have longer life, such as long-lasting tires for vehicles, as opposed to tires that have to be replaced after a few years. Or if you do not need an old book or old clothes or old electronic equipment, you can give them to a friend or donate them to Goodwill, charity, or public schools, or you can sell them in eBay or Craigslist. The next strategy in management of municipal solid waste is composting. Composting refers to the decomposition of organic materials such as leaves, grass, food, and wood that produce useful material for soil and can be used for gardening. Most of the yard waste and food waste and wood can be composted. Just put these materials in a container, and after a while, several months or years, you will have a rich compost for gardening. Almost 1/4 of household waste such as clipping from garden and food waste can be composted. That's a very high percentage of waste that can be turned to something useful. Here is the list of material issued by EPA that can be included or excluded from composting. For example, you shouldn't put pet feces in your composted pile because it can contain parasite. Or you can't put meat or fish into the compost because they start to smell and absorb flies and rodents. It also slows down the process of decomposition. So it is not recommended to add fish or meat to your compost if you would like to have a high quality compost that can be used in agriculture. 5 cities in Western US are leaders in composting, and 4 of them are in California, such as San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Jose, and San Diego. And the other one is Portland, Oregon. California is sometimes called state of composting because they promote high quality composting for agriculture. Each city has been able to divert 68% or more of waste from disposal sites. The next most favorable strategy for management of solid waste is recycling, the third R. We had source reduction, the first R, reuse, the second R, and recycling, which is the third R. According to EPA, Recycling is the process of collecting and converting waste into new material. So, for example, you can collect plastic, papers, glass, or aluminum cans, melt them down, and make other products like new cans or new aluminum products. It's being said that it's better not to crush aluminum cans in order to recycle them. Some advantages of recycling are decrease of the emission of greenhouse gases. It decreases the pollution rather than making them from beginning, and obviously it decreases the amount of material that has to be sent to landfill. It also creates new job opportunities, recycling. More than 700,000 jobs per year is created for recycling for companies. In order to collect the waste, companies that make equipment for collecting, and companies that turn the waste into new products. In this chart, you can see that the rate of recycling of municipal solid waste in the United States has increased from 5 million tons, this blue line, to in the year 1960 to almost 90 million tons in the year 2013. Or based on percentage, it increased from 6.4% of municipal solid waste in the year 1960 to 34.3% in the year 2013. Here you can see the products that are more frequently recycled. For instance, automobile batteries are almost 90% of recycled. Other products that are amenable to recycling are steel cans, papers, yard trimming, aluminum cans, and so forth, so on. California is doing a very good job at solid waste management. San Francisco is the leading city in US in recycling that has achieved 80% reduction of waste going to landfill. The next method of municipal solid waste management in terms of priority is incineration. Incineration simply means burning waste to produce energy. And incineration generates energy and at the same time reduces the volume and weight of waste by almost 95%. The plant can burn almost 2,000 tons of municipal solid waste every day at the temperature of 2,500 Fahrenheit. So it's a very, very high temperature, and there is no need to separate the waste. Even glass and aluminum will melt at this high temperature. And it generates sufficient electric energy for almost 40,000 homes. The metals can be recycled and the rest will be deposited in landfill. So this figure shows a waste to energy incinerator plant. The incineration of waste can produce electric energy. Although filters and scrubbers are used to remove pollutants, some may enter into the environment. Incineration can also produce ashes, which is almost 5% of waste that will be deposited in landfill or recycled. If it's a metal waste, it can be recycled. There are several limitations for waste to energy plants. First, the substance may be hazardous to human health and environment, such as toxic metals or heavy metals like cadmium, and can cause air pollution. Second, ashes still need to be deposited in landfill. Third, it's a very expensive way of management. Recycling is much better option. Incineration doesn't create much job, while 90% of material that is burned can be recycled. The United States incinerates almost 12% of municipal solid waste, and there are less than 100 incinerators in this country. And finally, landfill. The waste that can't be recycled or composted need to be deposited in landfills. And landfill is the last option in municipal solid waste management. First of all, you need to dig a very big hole, and then you need to line it with plastic or clay. This plastic lining or clay is applied to prevent leak to the groundwater. Second, a leachate system should be designed, and leachate system is a bunch of pipes to collect leachates, and leachate is the liquid from trash, garbage, rainwater mixed with chemicals. Then after you design the system, then you have to fill up the hole with garbage, and the garbage also should be compacted by bulldozer. Finally, you have to cover it with soil. We also built pipes in there because methane gas is produced and has to be controlled and be used to generate electricity. So there are several advantages for landfill. First of all, it's very cheap. It's the least expensive method for management of solid waste. You just need to dig a big hole and with a bunch of pipes, and we can handle a large amount of waste. That's why about 54%, almost more than half of the municipal solid waste in the US are buried in landfill. It can also produce energy, electricity, and heat. Landfills are the third largest source of methane gas in the United States. But there are also disadvantages for landfill. It produces greenhouse gases such as methane and carbon dioxide. If not collected properly, it can cause fire because methane is a flammable gas, and these two gases are important in global warming. Also, leachate can leak and contaminate groundwater and soil. Especially this is a serious issue for the older design of landfills. It also can contain toxic chemicals such as pesticides, batteries, solvents, and heavy metals. Site selection of landfill is also a challenging process, and a variety of factors are involved. Location of groundwater is important because your landfill should be far from groundwater or at least 20 feet above water table. Climate conditions should also be considered, and arid climate is the best because of less leachates produced. Type of soil that has lower permeability to contaminate groundwater. Topography, low relief is the most stable, so flat areas is preferred, and it has to be far from population because it produces pollution. And in summary, in order of most favorable to least favorable method for management of solid waste, the best one is source reduction, and worst option for management of municipal solid waste is landfill disposal. Now let's move on to the last module of lecture, hazardous waste management. Hazardous waste is the worst type of waste and can cause adverse effect on human health and environment. According to EPA, it has hazardous waste has at least one of these four characteristics: flammable, corrosive, reactive, or toxic. Examples of hazard waste are leftovers of pesticides, cleaning products, batteries, ash from incinerators, e-waste, which are electronic waste like cell phone, computers that may contain heavy metals. So we can't simply bury hazardous waste because they get into the ground supply and can contaminate them. But there are regulations to manage and clean hazardous waste sites. There are legislations and regulations for management and cleaning up hazardous waste that can be broken down into two main regulations, RCRA and CERCLA. RCRA stands for Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, and CERCLA stands for Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, which is also known as Superfund Act. Let's start with RCRA Act. RCRA is a federal law that established in 1976 It gives EPA the authority to control hazardous waste from cradle to grave. In other words, EPA can control hazardous waste management from the point it's generated, transported, stored, and finally disposed. Basically, they leverage taxes for the industries that produce hazardous waste and then use the taxes to store and dispose the wastes. And the purpose of it is to prevent illegal dumping of hazardous waste. The other one is Superfund Act, or CERCLA. Superfund Act started after Love Canal incident, which is a famous contamination or disaster. Love Canal is located in Niagara Falls in New York. Back in 1946, a chemical company had been dumping almost 20,000 tons of hazardous waste, including the dioxin, pesticides, and other toxic metals. And they just simply covered it, and after that they sold the place to a school. Houses and schools were built on top of that place, but after only a few years they started showing serious health effects such as birth defects, cancer, miscarriage or spontaneous abortion, and significant illness to the residents. And the company was charged for more than $200 million. What Superfund Act does is it looks at areas where there are huge contamination of hazardous wastes and clean them based on the priority and funds. There are several criteria for priorities of cleaning. How close they are to humans, whether they can spread to new areas, how close they are to drinking water. And in this map, all of these red points are Superfund sites that are placed on the national priority list, and the green one cleaned up and deleted from the list, and the yellow ones are proposed as Superfund sites. So think about solid waste. Why do you think Americans produce about twice as much municipal solid waste per person as do people in other industrialized countries? And what role does your lifestyle play in this waste production? And list 3 ways to reduce your output of solid waste.